What if writing a book wasn't just a creative expression, but a business decision? Today's guest has helped hundreds of entrepreneurs turn their stories into powerful business assets. And as someone who's currently writing my first major book, I can tell you the process isn't just transformational, it's also strategic and it can be hard too. So if you're an event professional, if you're an entrepreneur, speaker, consultant, creative, who's ever thought, well, maybe I should write a book, this episode is going to show you what's possible when you stop waiting and wishing and start building long-term leverage.
Welcome to the Events Demystified Podcast, where we demystify the world of in-person, virtual, and hybrid events, AV production, and AI technology by sharing practical tips, tricks, and strategies to help your event succeed. This podcast is brought to you by Treefan Events, a woman-owned boutique event production agency that caters to event professionals, small business owners, and entrepreneurs. We specialize in AV and AI education, integration, automation, and implementation, all based on our Fit for Events framework, which focuses on futuristic AV production, innovative AI technology, thriving audiences, and empowering behind-the-scenes teams. And I'm your host, Anca Treefan, with over 2 decades of hands-on experience in event production, event management, and now AI technologies and cybersecurity.
Hey friends, welcome back to another episode of Events Demystified Podcast, where we break down business strategy, technology, AV production, and leadership through the lens of event pros who want to scale smarter, not just faster. I'm Anca Treefan, a consultant working with event teams and agencies to implement real human-centered AI strategies that stick. Today's episode is a little extra personal because I'm also in the process of publishing my first major book. It's been 5 years in the making. This process wasn't just a creative outlet, it's also very intentional because thought leadership doesn't stop at LinkedIn posts or client wins or social media reels. It scales when you can package your thinking in a way that travels with or without you. Not for fun, but for impact. Books, when done right, I believe, are a form of business infrastructure. They position, they attract, they convert, and they last. That's why I'm especially excited to introduce today's guest, Steve Martilla, founder of boutique publishing agency that helps entrepreneurs write and monetize nonfiction books. Steve helps entrepreneurs and business owners turn their lived experiences into compelling, monetizable books that are there to last, hopefully a lifetime or beyond. So with that being said, what about we welcome our guest to the stage and get us started. Steve, welcome to the show. How are you doing today?
I'm excellent, Anca. Thanks for having me on the show.
Well, it's my great pleasure. And I usually start the conversation with a bit of an icebreaker just to get to know you a little bit. What's one thing most people would never guess about your journey into publishing?
Well, there's a lot of things, but I guess the one thing that's the most obvious is that I was a mechanical engineer for 15 years. I ended up leaving the job as a mechanical engineer. I was working with a lot of contractors at the time, companies doing $100 million turnover in their businesses. And I realized they needed marketing help. So I ended up starting a marketing agency. I got my first 4 clients. That was over 6 figures. And I haven't honestly looked back. I eventually got out of the marketing agency and started into the publishing space. But yeah, I actually started as a mechanical engineer, and I was a terrible writer in high school. So I don't even know how I got in this industry.
Well, I can tell you from my personal experience, my husband is a mechanical engineer, but he's also a music composer and very talented when it comes to playing every instrument out there. I am a trained musician. I play guitar and a few other brass instruments, but I have to practice. His brain works differently. I think it's this creative side with the logical, mechanical side of things that make the kinds of you work well in both spaces, both engineering and creative. So the genes you've got that are in your favor here, I think it's what got you on this new path. And you're right, it's not like the normal regular path that any mechanical engineer out there will take, but it's very interesting to hear that. So you went from 15 years engineering career to coaching to launching a successful publishing agency, and that's kind of a big bold pivot. Can you take us through this transition of how maybe failure actually helped you land where you were meant to be all along?
One thing's that, because I've shifted a lot of different businesses over the years, while I was working as a mechanical engineer, early on, I given a shot at life coaching, and that didn't go very well. I worked for about a year, got in more debt, and then went back into engineering. So what I realized is that there's certain businesses that are more aligned with my strengths and my gifts, and some that are not. So one of the things I found when I was working the marketing agency, although the clients paid a lot, like the first client I got paid me $40,000 for the year. And I was like, I got 3 clients. This is good. I was able to run and do that. But a part of me didn't feel aligned with it because I felt empty. I was just doing it for the money. At some point, you have to align with a thing that's totally aligned with your passion, strengths, and talents. I feel like that's a big part of the reason why I got into publishing. So what ended up happening as I was running my marketing agency, I had a client in publishing out of Nevada, Vegas. He was getting a ton of appointments from our efforts, and he talked to 100 different prospects over let's say about an 8-month period of time. And he closed like 1. So I said, do you okay if I jump on the sales calls with you? You see, sure. So I jump on the sales calls with him. We did 3, we closed 1. And I said, what if I just run the sales calls for you? So I'm doing the marketing, I'm running the sales calls. And I did this for 18 months. I was selling publishing, hadn't even published my own book yet. And I realized that the people that was enrolling in this program were actually asking me to help them with the book instead of the owner. And I was like, I would love to do that. I can unpack that a bit. The big thing was I was actually on the calls helping them write the book. And we had a note taker, so it would like start to pull the transcription, and we're getting all these big ideas. And then I would dump that into a Google document. And if the client signed, I'd send them the Google document. And then that was it. That was my role. But I really wanted to help them with actually writing the book. I realized that this was something I could do as well. I ended up getting into publishing my first book, which is this one right here. Has nothing to do with business at all. It's in a spiritual.
Is that self-published, or did you publish it under a certain publishing company? Where did you publish
Great question. So I have my own publishing company, and that's what I ended up publishing under. You could have easily published it under your own name if you wanted your own book. For me, the excitement was not just writing the book, although that's a very creative effort. I also really enjoyed getting involved with the marketing over the last 3 years. When a client ends up working with me, I'm like, how are we going to monetize this? This book here generates about $30 per book. And you say, how the heck is it generating $30 per book? Well, it sells for about $8 or $5, depending if you buy it on Amazon. But then the other $25 comes from what I offer on the back end of the book. I have a QR code to download that's only available from the book, which is a meditation that leads to a process where I make an offer. And then people jump on a call with me in a consultation, then I facilitate a process. And so I realized that not only could I have people buying the book, but then I would get clients to build a business off it. Now I'm having real impact as well as income.
What happens to your QR code?
Yeah.
Is there an expiration date to this offer?
Yeah. So when I'm gone, this book is still here. The QR code will still be there. There will still be people downloading it. The website will have to be hosted from my company. I expect it to survive me. But the deal is I'll take the calendar link or I'll offer it to someone else. Someone else can run that and facilitate that process. But the other thing is that like, this is a one-to-one offering, right? Like if you're an agency or you're in the space, you're facilitating events, this is a great way to onboard clients. One of the things that I discovered early in the process, I had this one business owner, and what he did is he published the book, and a month later, all he did was he handed out physical copies to people. He just bought them and sent them to people. So they ended up at their house. A month later, and these are just people he thought might be good clients, one of the guys reached back out to him after he read the book. About a month later, they had a conversation, and then they ended up signing a 6-figure contract. Now, this is someone that he had on his radar, my client, the author, for about 10 years, but that person didn't really understand what he did. So he sent him the book. And that helped bring awareness and satisfy the need to the reader. Oh, this is going to help me actually fix the problem that I have. And so that's what a really good book will do. It will transform the worldview of the reader so that your paradigm shifts and you're like, oh, this is something that I didn't realize needed. Now I realize that I do. But besides that, there's a lot of impact as well. Because, like this book, I got sold about 98 books in March alone on Spotify, not including all the other.
This is Spotify as an audiobook?
Absolutely. The reason we do that, Anca, is because there's 60 million titles on Amazon and only 300,000 on Spotify.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have 160 million Europeans. There's about 100 million North Americans that are on Spotify, and there's only 300,000 titles for audiobooks. There's lots of podcasts, so there's lots of like music, but there's like almost zero books. And so this book I sell around, I get about 15 to 17 people a week listening to my book with no advertising, no marketing at all. And the reason is because it's a vacuum. So what we do is we actually encourage people to create the audiobook, the author, because what happens is it actually streamlines and distributes so that you actually increase your paperback sales, which is it's not intuitive, but it's definitely something that happens.
Absolutely. So let's go back to ROI. I want to dig deeper into that, not just in vague branding terms, but actual business outcomes. If you are putting your expertise into a book, you probably want to turn it into some kind of an outcome, right? You mentioned offers, leads. What else do your clients turn their books into?
Yeah, some of the things on the back end of the book or the book itself.
We could do both ways, right? Like there's two different avenues that we can go at it with this.
Yeah, let me mention the obvious one. This will be relevant to the listeners or someone watching. It'll open doors for speaking engagements. And so when I first came out with my book, a company out of Colorado reached out to me. Obviously, the book's on Amazon, had some good reviews. And we said, we have a small community of like paid subscribers. We'd love to have you come in as a guest. I show up, we do the show. Everything was done remotely. And at the end of the show, the people behind the scenes that were setting up all the equipment had basically said, we'd love to have you come back and do a series. So you do 6 or 7 shows weekly. I said, absolutely. I love it. Let's do it. So we did that. They sent me this microphone, the lighting, all the stuff that I have was paid for them. I ended up doing that series. I still get people buying my book. I had someone this week reach out to me to do a consultation from that process years ago. So that's one of the things that it'll definitely do is open doors for speaking. The book doesn't have to be like 45,000 words. It can be. But just 2 or 3 good 5-star reviews is all you need. And people who are interested in that topic will definitely buy the book. I found one book online. I didn't do a lot of research on this. It's called The Art of Gathering, How We Meet, Why It Matters.
That's a very famous book in our industry.
That book is like, it positions well the idea of like creating this bond in, obviously some sort of like environment. I thought that's a great way to share the content. What I did also see is a lot of people pitching to other people to grow their event business. And I was like, okay, that's fine too. But for people who actually want corporate gigs and that sort of thing, to position the importance of creating bond in a certain environment, I think that's a great way to lead into consultation to hire someone as an agency or whatever to do an event.
Right, absolutely. So let's go to the strategy of you writing the book, you help your clients write this book. Is this on their main expertise? Is this something on like some thought leadership they have? Or like, how do you pick? I think the hardest thing is for someone to look at their career of 20-something years, say in events, production, or technology, or any other industry. It doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be just event related. And try to distill down what are the things that are worth writing about? What are the things that I want to do more, maybe speaking engagements about, or I can help with? How do you come up to those things? Because you might have a career, really well-defined career, but you know a little bit about a lot of things. So coming to a topic that is straightforward, one direction, one focus, can be hard sometimes. How do you get people to that point? I'm curious about the strategy once you get this book written and edited and then it's published. I know there's a strategy to make sure it does well from a sales point of view, from getting the reviews point of view, from being top number, I don't know, one in this particular category on the Amazon book list or whatever. Let's go step by step through these processes, because I'm super curious to hear sort of like, what's your insights into that?
Okay, so the key thing is like two things right out the gate is like, and this will help for your book as well, Anca, is that like you've got to be able to picture the reader. You want to like, so if you have past clients that you know are going to read this book, picture that client. That alone will help you focus a lot. Sometimes what I find is I'll get a draft. Someone sends me 45,000 word draft. I'll read through it. Like I'll scan through sections, I'll read through it. And I'm like, there's like 3 different audiences. And sometimes if you have a broader book, that's possible. But for most people, it's like there's one. You're not writing to, like this one gentleman I work with is like, why did you add this? And it was like, oh, those are for scientists and PhDs. And I'm like, but
your audience for the most part is not that.
Isn't your audience C-suite executives? Yeah. Okay. Well, can you see how that doesn't fit? Yeah. Okay. So the first thing is get very clear in the audience. The second thing is that we've discovered from helping authors write and publish their books is that a really good book will shift the worldview of the reader. Like you'll actually be reading your book. That person that you picture reading your book will have a paradigm shift. And what you want to ask yourself is, what 1, 2, 3 big ideas must be in the book for that reader in order to transform their worldview? And as soon as you start getting ideas around what that is, we want to unpack and go deeper on what that is, because that is going to be potentially one of the themes, a chapter, something that needs to be in the book. If you're writing to an audience interested in starting a brand new event business, you say, well, what would be the 1 or 2, 3 things you must tell the person that started this 20 years ago? And then that must be in the book. Like, what are those things? So that's the key thing first. The second is keep focusing on the person who is the reader of the book. And if you do that while you're writing, then that helps a lot. The third thing I'll add is, because obviously anyone who is going to consider authoring a book, is that the writing of it, is it going to be worth the effort? What I can tell you is, if you have a 3-minute rant that answers the question, what is the 1 or 2 big ideas that will shift the worldview of the reader? You just pick up your phone and start talking, and you're recording it. There's a transcription built right into the phone for 3 or 4 minutes. That's 3,000 words. Take that, put it in a Google document. Then you go through another sequence of questions. Okay, what do you mean by this? Unpack to make it clear for the reader. And what you'll find is that 30,000 words, which is like a 150-page book, is not that hard to get to. And we usually do it in 8 to 10 weeks, because we're having a dialogue, we're transcribing, and then there's writing in between. But the author is only writing 3-4 hours a week. You sit down for 2 hours and another 2 hours, twice a week, plus the conversation with me. In 8 to 10 weeks, we have the draft done. Then we go into developmental editing to make sure the reader is making pictures while they're reading the book. Key part of the process. And then final manuscript and publish. So yeah, the key thing is, I guess, 1, make sure you can picture the reader. 2, think about the transformation you're helping them walk through. Some people that need your solution are not there yet. Like, they don't realize that they need you or need to have an event in Barcelona in Spain, right? They don't know that they need you yet. So take them through the reasons why they would and how it will help their company, the individual, whatever it is. If you can do that, the third thing, like I said, is transcribe. Just start talking into your phone. You can write the whole book that way. That's how I did my first book. I was literally talking. I had some videos on YouTube. I transcribed them, added them. That was like 75% of the draft, just doing that.
I think that works great for people that think their thoughts out loud. I'm actually a writer before I'm a speaker. So I think better in writing. So for me, I do need that sit down time to process my thoughts in writing. And then I go from there. Just speaking into ChatGPT to take my transcript into whatever writing.
ChatGPT is good as well.
Scrivener.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for me the same way. That's why, because this book particularly, it's a different type of book than just selling AI or AV knowledge or strategy. I needed to also go through it at its own pace. There were seasons where I knew that I can touch it because I was in that season. And I needed to come out of that season to be on the other side, to be able to say, I'm writing now from a place of power, not a place where I'm still working through these things or I'm still healing from these things. So I think there's definitely different processes to go at it. And that's why for me, like having this 5-year of giving it time, and only this year, I finally came to that place of like power where I was ready. Like it was screaming out of me that it's time. I think that's a very intuitive process. It's not for everyone, right? But it's also very vulnerable and personal. It's a memoir, not your 7 steps to a better AI strategy, which I can write in no time, the same way
Right.
as I did other small books before. I think depends on the process, like depends on the book. It depends on what do you want the story to be, the narrative that you're saying, right? And for me, this was important to get out where I was, where I am, and where I'm going. So when you think of the strategy of putting this book out into the world, right, we talked about how it will be there for, a lifetime or beyond that. What is your thoughts on how do you approach, that first week of publishing? Like there's a process to it. There's a process to every
Absolutely.
madness, right? To any chaotic situation out there has to be a process. How do you go about that?
Yeah. By the way, my second book has very much been a work in progress the last 3 for the same reasons. I haven't gone through some of the lessons I needed to get that were need to be shared in the book. Now that I'm almost ready to publish, I did go moments in time where I was like, it's not ready yet. 3 months later, all of a sudden the download comes and then I'm
Right.
in. As far as publishing goes, I got to disclaim a couple things. The publishing industry does have a dark side. There will be companies out there, agencies that will say, hey, we'll get you on Amazon bestseller list. We'll put your book for, say, I don't know, $2.99, maybe for the Kindle. They'll sell 800 in one day. All of a sudden, you're on the top of the list. But then you have people that have spent $1, 800 people to buy the book. I will tell you from experience that most of those people will not leave reviews of the book, which means they're not reading the book. So the question you want to ask yourself is, do you want to get clients and get the ROI from the book and have people read it, or do you just want to sell books? There was a guy I worked with years ago in Texas, and he ended up buying a list of people, 100,000 people that he would pay to go and buy the books. And then again, they would get on the Wall Street Journal best-selling list. So it's like, do you want readers of the book? The best way is start with a soft launch. Get like 100 people, 10 people, 5 people to read the book and leave you a review on Amazon. That honestly, the first 3 or 4 5-star reviews goes a long way to give you credibility, because now all of a sudden you go from not being known to being in a category where someone says, I'm interested in the topic, I trust Amazon, and this has good reviews. I'm going to put my money here. You got a reader. Once you've done the soft launch and you have those reviews, there's a million and one ways to market the book. It comes down to your preference. If you're okay speaking on podcasts, we have a partner company that we work with, has access to 15,000 podcasts, 5,000, which we have a really good relationship with. There's some big ones on there that have like 1 million, 3 million monthly listeners. And you pay per show and get on those shows and be willing to do a podcast tour. If you want to go and speak, be willing to do a speaking tour. But definitely get the word out with the book in order to generate sales of the book, and then see what happens. If you sell 100 books and you get one client that's worth $15,000 or $30,000 for you, then you know your numbers. You got a 1% conversion rate on 100 readers. When I offer the QR code for people to come and, obviously connect with me, I'm building a list of people who bought my book. So if I launch something else, come up with other offers, in this case, I have a second book coming out, I can send it to them. And that's a great thing to do, because Amazon and Spotify won't give you those names and numbers of those people. But once you've done the podcast tour, you can do some LinkedIn messaging, sending out cold messages to get people to actually buy your book. It works. If people see they're interested in the topic, it's on Amazon, I trust Amazon and use my credit card, and it has some reviews, then they'll go buy it. And I've signed clients doing that as well, from the people who bought the book. Our clients and the authors we work with are generally very busy. So, 3 to 4 hours a week is a stretch for them to work with me to get the draft done. If I say to them, I need you to go out and do a speaking tour, it's going to cut, 10 hours a week. There's no way they're going to do it in flight times. But a podcasting tour where they're an hour and a half show once a week, they can do that. And that will go a long way. 50, 100 books on one show. And, those 100 books will get you that one client. And you just do that once a month, and you've got a really lucrative business in the back end of the book.
Yeah, absolutely. This year, when I finally gave it the go that it's time, I'm actually every morning, 5 a.m. to 7 a.m., those are my block times. and that's writing time. And that has been the needle, kind of like the needle that moved this process forward, because it does take time and commitment, especially if it's something that's heavy writing. It requires sit down time, and that's what I needed to do for myself. Now, let me ask you something, because I feel like in our time right now, there's so much content out there. Also, we struggle with attention span, and I grew up reading books like that was my full-time job, really. I loved reading books. Read all the classics. I mean, the whole library that's real behind me, it's a testament to the fact that I do love books. But I'll tell you honestly, I don't think in the last few years I've actually started a book that I also finished, because of the pace at which we live our life and how many priorities are constantly battling for our attention. Do you feel like that has changed the way we write books, the way we consume it, and also the way the expectation of the reader is? For example, I go on LinkedIn, I'm very active. I love to post daily thought leadership, AI related, technology related, and then some personal stuff. And I know specifically for me to post something, I have to be able to read it myself. And because I have a bit of ADHD, I know that my writing has to be broken down with breaks, so I can not just read it, but if I have to just glance, I already got the main idea. When you look at a book and it has so many words on paper, I get overwhelmed just thinking about it. There's way too many words. Do you feel like that has changed the way we put words on paper, in a way that they're more broken down? There's more spaces in between paragraphs. The paragraphs are shorter. The sentences are shorter. All of that goes in the strategy of how do you make this book readable, so that whoever buys it, it's not going to buy it and then put it on the shelf because they're like, oh my gosh, there's just too much stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you, Anca. The key thing is anytime I write copy, or even when I'm working with a client in a book, and we do a lot of the writing as well, by the way. That's why the clients are not writing as much, because we're ferreting out, pulling out the bigger, stronger ideas. But yeah, I'm big on white space on the page. And also, and this is more in the editing stage, I have an amazing editor out of California. Her name's Sarah. And what she does is she'll help the reader make pictures. Like if you can do that, which most authors can't, there's a lot of crappy books out there, let's just be honest. If you can do that and set the scene, and I'm not talking about adding charts or visuals or images on top of the book, I'm actually talking about the person's reading the book, they're like, oh, I can see myself there.
Telling the stories in pictures.
You got it. So they're seeing the story in pictures. That will get someone to read through the book very quickly. However, technology has been disruptive and it's changed our attention span. So that's why I'm a big proponent of get the Audible book. You can listen at the gym, you can be on a commute, train ride, you could be flying, and you can listen to a 3 or 4 hour book, which is 150, 60 pages, and be done with it. If it's 200 pages, maybe it's 4 or 5 hours. But literally you could sit down and you've listened to the whole book. If you like the content and you like the topic, you'll usually go buy the paperback.
True, 100%. I will say that. Like I do listen to audio books, and then if I'm really into that book, I'll go and buy it. Even though I'll probably never read the hard copy. But
yeah, here's the crazy thing that we didn't really talk about is that once I've had, so last year I had a couple women reach out to me from my process that I facilitate for my book, both of them from Spotify, great conversations. Both of them said something that kind of blew my mind. The first one said that she listened to the book twice. So that's like 6 hours of listening to me. The second woman said she listened to my book 3 times. So that's 9 hours. If someone can listen to your book on Audible for 9 hours, there's a dynamic that happens, because I've done it myself. If you listen to something long enough, you start thinking about it, then you start applying what they're saying. You start to benefit from the information you've been given. And so the author is actually helping you the longer you're more engaged with them, right? So that's why Audible's a big focus of what we do. Now, if that person goes and benefits from whatever tip or suggestion or way of thinking that you provided in the book, they're going to be thinking to themselves, well, if I pay this person, how much better would it be? There's this curiosity around it. So it really becomes a driver in the way they think about the whole concept. If you're just going to focus, like I mentioned at the beginning, like Kindle and selling like 800-900 copies a day for like 10 days and you get on the bestseller list, those people are not buying the book generally because you're paying $1, $2, whatever it is for that book. Even if they pay full price, I'll give you some numbers to demonstrate this. When we did the initial launch for my book, The paperback, 25% of the people who got the book went and downloaded the meditation from the book. It took about 3 months, which makes sense. Pick up the book, put it back down on your nightstand, pick it up again, that sort of thing. So that was paperback Kindle.
You gotta give us a little bit of a sneak peek into what the premise of the book is about. And I hear meditation, I'm like, is this like a wellness book? What is this?
Oh, okay. So this is partly my story. Like you're
Right.
writing a memoir, how I transitioned from engineering to life coach, and what some of the key insights and ideas that I learned from that I share in the book. The reason I asked the reader to download the meditation is because it gives you a chance to practice what I'm sharing in the book. Now, when I did the paperback, 25% of the people bought the book, got the QR code from there. And then from there, 1 out of every 7 people booked a consultation with me, okay? When we promoted the Audible book 6 months later, 85% of the people who got the Audible book went and downloaded the meditation right from the book. Engagement's like 3 times as high. When most readers don't do this, I know you're going to do it now, Anca, is create the Audible book.
Obviously, I'm a sound engineer. That was a no-brainer. That was going to be an Audible book.
Has to be, yeah. The interesting thing about this whole space is that Spotify is fairly mature. It's got a lot of listeners, but in the last year, they changed the royalty structure. So let's say your book's $10, Audible, someone buys it on Spotify, used to get like $1. Now it's $5. And the reason they did that, they just changed it this year, 2025. The reason they did that is because they want to incentivize authors to get their books on Spotify.
The first time I came across a book in my playlist was actually a bonus book. It's a mix of narrative and music. So it's like this whole experience that takes you into the life of Bono, which I thought was fantastic. But if I were to go and listen to a book, my first choice would have been Audible, not Spotify. But now that I'm experiencing this other medium, I'm like, this is, I mean, I already listened to all my music on Spotify. I love that Spotify doesn't cut me out when I'm flying, and I don't need signal to listen to my playlist and my downloadables. I think they're definitely putting a lot of strategy, and there is a reason for it, because we do consume audio more than we consume any other way of content, especially on the go.
Especially on the go. So if your clients, the readers of the book, are busy people, it's got to be number one choice for distribution.
Yeah. So what are some common myths that you feel like entrepreneurs have about publishing, about writing books? How do you write a book that's actually good and that helps people stay on track? I mean, I feel like this is 2 questions in one, but I think there's definitely a lot of myths that come with, writing a book, writing a good book, publishing it, all that stuff.
It's going to depend on your personality and your preference. We have some authors that are amazing storytellers and they're terrible writers. And I would say most of our clients, I'd say 90% of them are great at articulating ideas verbally, but terrible at writing them down. The reason is that's why they hire us. They need someone to do the heavy lifting, to do the writing. I've got at least 2 other writers on my team. When someone's working with us, if they're a great storyteller and they're like, well, I remember Mark, this one guy I worked with last year, he said, okay, let me tell you the story and then we'll see if it fits for the book. He tells me the story. It's like a 10-minute rant. It's the whole chapter. I'm telling everyone, you got to read this book. It's about for CEOs, but it's called The Turnaround CEO, Mark Kresser. And the book is awesome because he puts and talks about how to incentivize employees so that their compensation drives output, where a lot of companies are not set up that way. It's a great story to illustrate that. But at the beginning, he starts by saying, hey, I've got a deal with the sales guys. If we meet these targets, I will shave in the back of my head the logo of the company. And so they go to the Christmas party. He hired a barber, and it was like this whole thing where he shaves it in right in front of everyone. Everyone's going nuts. They're giving out bonus checks to everyone because they've done so well for the year. Anyways, it talks about this. So what I find a lot of readers do is they'll share a principle or a concept that's a very strong one, but then don't have necessarily a very good story to go with it. So I'm always bringing in ideas or stories from other companies to help the author do that. If you can definitely bring in a story that will have some emotional connection to people can relate to, then it will help. But it is an art and a science. We don't want to be boring. Usually we start with what we call the inciting incident. Like, where did you learn or discover this new principle? I do it in my book. It ended up being a client who discovered what he calls the 7-day manifestation experiment because he was doubting his external world was under his influence. He was doubting that he had any influence on anything, and he was feeling like a victim. And I said, let's just do an experiment for 7 days. This is over a decade ago. All I want you to do is to visualize 3 outcomes for 5 minutes every morning, and then forget you even did it. He imagined winning the poker game that he played every Thursday. Mm-hmm. He imagined someone making him a meal, not anyone specific, and he imagined someone buying a beer for him at the pub. On Thursday that week, he emailed me. He won the game at the card game. He got the beer and he got the meal prepared for him. And so we ended up calling it the 7-day manifestation experiment. It was like that transformation for him was the introduction to the book, because he discovered something new about his influence on his external world.
I think there's so much power in visualization. I practice that quite a bit, but I didn't realize that I'm practicing it, even though I have done it all my life. For example, when I was 12, I envisioned myself that when I was going to be 20 something, I was going to go and see the Statue of Liberty. I was 12. What does a 12-year-old know about any of that? Sure enough, right after college, that was my dream, save enough money, make it one-way ticket to New York to go and see that. Now, side story to that, 20 years later, I have not seen the Statue of Liberty, but guess what? I'm going to New York next month to see the Statue of Liberty because it's been too long. I've always kind of traveled around New York all this time, going to events and speaking at events and working events, but I never had the time and bandwidth to actually make it an intentional trip for this just one purpose alone. When I first got into bodybuilding right after COVID, I visualized that I was going to win my first bodybuilding show. I mean, I was a tall rookie. Sure enough, 2 swords on the wall, 2 first places, and that was my first show ever. So there's power in seeing yourself do something and then letting your mind figure out the path, the journey, the steps that will get you there. I don't know exactly how that translates into the physical world, but in the mental world, it works miracles. I'm right there in the gym thinking, okay, I need to hit a new PR. There's no way I'm going to lift 300 pounds. But what if I could? And that is enough of a seed to let your mind believe that you can. And sure enough, I will hit that PR. So there's so much power in that. I'm not one of those woo-woo kind of people that believes in shit like that. But what you set your mind to accomplish and the way you talk to yourself and the way you visualize goals, it's so important. I'm a big fan of that.
Absolutely. So that's the inciting incident. It's a compelling story. It doesn't have to be yours. It could be a company story, someone you know, as long as you maybe, leave them anonymous, but that shares the principle in an exciting way. What a lot of authors do is, at least our clients, has got so much experience, so much knowledge, they're trying to unpack too much at one time. I had this one woman I worked with last year. We got to the end of the draft. We had 60,000 words. We used the first 30,000, and I kept like challenging her, and we kept putting it to the end of the document. So we ended up splitting the document in 2, and the first 30,000 ended up being the book. You don't want to confuse the reader or make it difficult for them to figure out what you're trying to say. It should be intuitive. It should be easy. That's the kind of books that we end up writing.
I love it. So as far as publishing trends that you are seeing take off right now, I try a lot of AI tools. I try them for my clients so they don't have to go through the pain of trying them out and not working out for them. I came across quite a few AI tools that will write your book in 10 minutes, and then you put out a bunch of content that it's speed by ChatGPT, like words that make no sense on paper. But people sell those books, and I don't know who reads them or who buys them, but it's become this kind of a trend, which to me, it's a joke because it only brings down, I think, the quality of real writers, of people that actually have things to say, and they definitely have expertise to back those claims up. So what do you see in that space that it's either helping or hurting the process?
Yeah, great question. It's interesting. I get 2 types of people before they even book a consult with us. And it's like, are you using AI? And if you are, then I'm not sure that I want to work with you. And then the other ones
I think there's place for AI to help with not edit, but like get your thoughts more concise. But that still involves having a draft, having a manuscript. I'm really good at putting words on paper, but then I go through the flow. And this is where AI is super helpful to analyze everything written, make sure that flow is consistent, that the story comes up, that whatever I'm trying to put out there, it's actually clear, because my mind can be like, oh, blah, 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 all these words, right? Whereas like you want someone, like you said, to be able to read that and it makes sense. Make it make sense. Yeah.
And then the other type of person who is like, I will only work with you if you're using AI, right? So we get those two different groups of people.
Mhm.
But the way we're using AI is definitely in the research process. It's always great if you can just go into ChatGPT to pull up an example of something that is
Right.
like a story. So you pull up stuff right away. It's good. I have clients who'll say, I'm just going to get the AI to go through the whole script at the end. Great. Really cool.
Limitations to that, because I've been fighting with Claude over long manuscripts, and somewhere 75% in, it gets it. And then the 25%, I'm like, what happened?
2 years ago, I offered to take care of an audiobook for someone. This is before the AI would read the book, and that's what I was getting to. But I was reading through the book, and the first third was amazing. And then after that, I was like, what the hell happened? I was like, it was so chaotic. It was just like a grid, a matrix of ideas that had no relation to the first third. So anyways, AI has come so far in the last year that now we have voices. You can't really tell they're not human. And they will read the book for the author. We do it all for the client, but some clients don't have the bandwidth to read their own book. So that's where we're using it. And they'll do
What do you use?
11 labs.
Okay. Yeah.
11
Well, I'll
labs.
tell you one struggle I have with 11 labs and HeyGen, Santej, I mean, I tried all of them, is for someone that is not a native American speaker or English speaker,
Yes.
and you have somewhat of an accent, I think it would be unauthentic to not record my own book with this accent versus trying to delegate that to AI that doesn't sound like me. I've had an entire season of AI generated audio content aside from my real season. When I first introduced my AI avatar, it freaked the heck out of my audience because it didn't sound like me. It looked like me, but it didn't sound like me, right? So I know it's come a long ways. Now you can really, really train those models to sound like you. But at the beginning, when I was considering that, I'm like, no, it has to be my voice, because otherwise I'm basically selling something that is going to come across as not authentic.
So that's always my number one preference. I read my own books. I don't use a machine to read it. If you're looking to get people to go through the book, engage with them, and then have them take an action to download something and then go further, highly recommend you read your own book. I do it. I'm reading my second one. I enjoy the process, but it's an available tool for those.
Right. It's not for everyone. Like you said, it is a time commitment.
Yeah. The other thing was you can hire a narrator as well, but I had a woman last year who hired a narrator, and I, got in a call with her. I said, okay, your audiobook's done. I was like, what do you think? She ended up picking the woman that read the book. She said, it's not me. She doesn't enunciate where I would have. I'm like, yeah, because you're the subject matter expert on this thing. So you're going to say it differently, and that's going to impact the reader in ways that you couldn't even imagine. The other way, I mean, we use AI is like, and you got to be careful with this, is like images in books. If I need a chart or something quick, I'll get the AI to generate an image. Got to make sure you don't pick stuff that's like a little symbol from Disney inside your book, and then you find out 5 years later.
Copyright issues.
Don't get the AI to create covers either, because usually you can go buy those from the artist. You own it and commercially use it. So you got to be careful with that stuff. Like, you just don't want to get to trouble later on. Like, you know what I mean?
You might get famous, and then it's going to go under the microscope and be like,
what I'm in litigation for the next 12 years because I have this tiny little thing, a little bird that's used in the Disney, whatever. You don't know, right? I have an illustrator and an artist that I work with out of California, and they do all that stuff. They buy the images. We do use it. It's been really helpful. I use it with the transcript. It's transcribing all of our conversations. I found even accents, like a lot of European clients, it pulls in their, no problem. It's awesome. And especially if you're a British author writing to a British audience, you maybe want to pull in some of the English slang. And so we'll do that. I think that's really cool.
What I was thinking is, one other question came to mind, because a lot of my listeners are speakers, they're event producers, technologists, experts, consultants, and they lived through the wild, high stakes experiences of planning, producing, experiencing events. Why is that exactly the kind of story that you feel like would make a great business book? Or is there any value to that?
I mean, I've had two types of, I'll give you kind of variation. I have people that come to me sometimes and they'll say, well, I think I got an idea, but I'm not sure. I'll say, okay, let's talk through the idea. Once we pull out the stronger concepts or stories, you say, is this something worth sharing? Forgetting about ROI and everything, is this worth sharing? That's not something I can determine. That's something the author determines. You're obviously writing your book because it's worth sharing, right? Of course you can monetize it, but is it worth sharing? If it is, and you want to get the message out to a lot of people, then I highly recommend you do it. And I didn't mention this, but when we do go through the Spotify platform that published the Audible book, we use a site called Findaway Voices. When you publish the Audible files there, it goes into a distribution through the library network that is worldwide. I literally every month sell books in Canada, Australia, the US. People are going and listening to it. The library pays me the royalty. And I mean, so there's plenty of ways to get the book out there. But yeah, it's gotta be worth it for you to get the message out. Like, is this worthy of, obviously, are you worthy of it, but also is it worth getting it into other people's minds?
Absolutely. So I guess when writing a book, there's very strong personalities in our industry. What do you feel shifts the perception of someone from being seen as a doer into a leader, a visionary in their field through the process of writing a book?
Well, okay, I don't know if this is a positive thing or not, but just because, I'll give you an example. For years, I was offering these consultations when I was doing the coaching. I still do it to this day. I had done white papers. I had, hundreds of videos of YouTube videos, build up the channel. I did articles on a blog, maybe 200 or 300 articles in a blog over a period of years. And the best people I got were from the book. Like, I'd have a sales conversation or a consultation. I was like, wow, that was the easiest one I've ever had.
They already knew you. They already were inside.
So that dynamic is available to you when you publish. I had a 3-hour webinar. It was selling a program off it. And that was cool too. But the quality of people I get from the book are just unreal. So and the second thing is that even if it's a terrible book, if you've published, it changes people's perceptions of you. I remember the first time I published my book, my brothers came home. He drove home. We did a family dinner, Thanksgiving or something. And he's like, congratulations, he gives me a big hug. I was like, what? Because I was an author now. So it changes people's perception.
Right. You're exactly like, it's, as a speaker, I go and speak at events. And if you also put next to your name that you're an author, even though nobody's heard about that book, it's a completely different dynamic. Not everybody has the discipline, the time, the commitment to put something out there in a form that will last, right? So there is a level, I feel like, a respect that people get from that process alone. That is that perception. It's that idea that, well, they've definitely done something I'll never do in my lifetime. Therefore, they are worthy of my respect.
Totally. It's this social conditioning we have is that, they must, it's not like you're a celebrity, but you do get put on a pedestal. It changes that dynamic, credibility to perceiver's mind. Because of that, they approach you differently, which is why I was saying on the consultations, I was getting these people. I couldn't believe the difference. It was very magnetic.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. I can relate to that. For example, my journey into podcasting that started many years ago when I worked in radio through high school and college. But when I finally decided to start my own podcast, I'm like, why am I not doing this? I loved the whole radio experience. Why am I not doing this for myself? When I finally did that, it's a completely different type of networking and relationship building you do with the people that have already listened to your podcast and know you from the podcast. Those were the people and the doors that have opened to me the easiest, because it felt like we already had a rapport before we even established rapport, if that makes sense. Yes. And I can see how a book would do the same way. Now, as we come up to a wrap here, Steve, before we close, what's one thing that you wish more people in business understood about the power of their own voice, especially in times of transitions or reinvention?
The biggest thing would be something I alluded to earlier, but that's that when someone is listening to your book, and I guess it's the same experience when they're a follower of your podcast, 3, 6, 9 hours, it's like it changes their perspective of you. They start to use that information. They're listening to it, but then they start to use some of the same language and words you're using, and then start to act the way that you're suggesting in the book. It can be very transformational. If you are aware of that and you haven't published your own book yet, you can build a platform around the book. It really changes the dynamic. And especially if you have a warm network of people that you know would be interested in the book, it's a great way to bring them from warm to hot.
Absolutely. Well, with that, Steve, thank you so much for bringing the fire into our wannabe authors that probably are still on the sideline thinking, will I ever have the time? Will I ever accomplish this? Well, if you need some direction, here's your person right here. Thank you also for bringing clarity in this process. For those who want to learn more about your processes or get started on their own book writing journey and publishing journey, where can they find you?
Just go to freeauthorblueprint.com. I've got a template there that will give you some ideas and questions about starting to think through some of the ideas. I even have a section that helps you start the book, like that first chapter, and how to think of it. If you go to Free Author Blueprint, you can get that for free.
I love it. Well, with that, if this episode was of any value to you, please make sure that you share it with your network and follow, subscribe, do all those things, drop a review. That really helps us get the word out. And until next time, stay strategic, stay visible, and stay building. Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to the Events Demystified podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with other professionals like yourself. If you're interested in learning more about TreeFan events, including our future AI education talks and workshops, or to see how we can support your next event, book a free 20-minute consultation through the link in the episode notes. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast and follow us on YouTube, Spotify, and social media for updates on future episodes, industry insights, AI news and tips. If you have any topics you'd like us to cover, feel free to reach out.
All right.